Okay, so we'll get started. Several people have asked me what my name was. And so I'm Dr. Justin Anderson. I'm a physician here in town, and I'm actually an ophthalmologist, and I do cataract surgery on people. So I'm not a diet doctor, and I don't want you to be my patient, and I don't want you to come to my clinic. I want you to have as few doctors in your life as possible. And I want you to take as few medications as possible. And you know, we'll talk about that during the conference. There's a lot of people, there's a lot of ways that a lot of people can make a lot of money on your diet products. And I don't want you to have to buy all the diet products either. So we're going to talk some about these carbohydrates, and the question is, well, if these carbohydrates are bad for you, why do we eat so much? And then we'll talk more about some of the ill effects of these carbohydrates. First of all carbohydrates cause the insulin-glucose roller coaster. And we talked about this, or I showed it to you before in that slide. And what happens is, this is your blood sugar over time. Your blood sugar starts out somewhere around normal. You eat a high-carb meal, it doubles, it goes up to 180. What happens is, somewhere around 2 to 3 hours later, you crash. And when you crash, you're hungry. What causes your blood sugar to be low and for you to be hungry 2 hours after you eat? The meal before. It's just like a smoker. Smokers say that they smoke because it relaxes them. And a smoker has to smoke every single hour on the hour to feel relaxed. But what caused them to feel tense was the cigarette before. A smoker has a smoke, he feels relaxed, he feels good. And then over the course of an hour, the nicotine wears off, he starts feeling stressed, and as he starts feeling stressed out, he needs another cigarette. And another cigarette relaxes him again. So he's actually going through a withdrawal. And that's what this is. This is like blood sugar withdrawal. If you want to not feel this way and you want to not feel hungry every 2 hours, you stop eating these things. And that was one of my biggest realizations, was when I started losing weight. I would have some days where during the middle of the morning, 2 hours after breakfast, I was excruciatingly hungry. And I would think, man, why am I so hungry? It's because I had oatmeal. You know, it's because if I ate some sort of carbohydrate meal in the morning, 2 hours later, I would be terribly hungry because I went here. Now that's all carbohydrates. All carbohydrates cause that to happen. The second thing is sugar. Sugar specifically, including sugars like high fructose corn syrup and table sugar. They stimulate your brain. They stimulate what's called the reward center in your brain, and it gives you just a little bit of a high. And it's not a feeling of like being high, it's just like a pleasurable feeling. And you sort of get that pleasurable feeling, and so when you eat sugar, you want to eat more sugar because it kind of makes you feel good. And wheat does both of those things. Wheat causes the blood sugar crash. Wheat stimulates the reward center in your brain, and wheat specifically has substances in it called exorphins. What the exorphins do is they stimulate your brain and give you a little high. And what happens is, 2 hours later, when you eat wheat, we'll go back over to the board. When you eat wheat, this blood sugar roller coaster happens. And not only does the blood sugar roller coaster happen, but just like a smoker, 2 or 3 hours, you start going through wheat withdrawal. Sorry, it's not showing up. Drawal. You start going through wheat withdrawal. So these exorphins that are stimulating your brain, they give you a little bit of a high. 2 3 hours later, the blood sugar crashes. Not only are you hungry, but you're going through withdrawal, just like a smoker. Just like a smoker who smoked, and now it's an hour later, and he needs to feel relaxed again because he's starting to feel tense. So even if you don't consume heroin and you don't consume cocaine, if you're consuming wheat, you are consuming addictive exorphins. You're consuming a drug. That's why if the only thing that you did was cut wheat out of your diet completely, anything made out of flour, anything made out of, that's a type of bread, people who cut the wheat out of their diet, they consume 350 to 400 calories less per day just by cutting out the bread. And that's because people who eat wheat, you don't realize it consciously, you don't do it consciously, but when you eat wheat, you do it because you get a little high. And when you're not eating wheat, you eat less because you're not eating for the drug-like effect of the exorphins. So wheat is a uniquely fattening food. So just say no to drugs. So we talked about the exorphins. The exorphins in wheat are the same thing as nicotine in cigarettes. The exorphins are what make wheat addictive, just like the nicotine is what makes cigarettes addictive. And that's why when I talk to people about eating low carb and they say, oh, bread, man, I love bread. I love rolls. I can't stop eating bread. Bread's the best. Yeah. You can hear that and recognize that as a sign of what it is. It's a sign of wheat addiction. There's a book called Wheat Belly, and it's listed in your handout. And in Wheat Belly, Dr. William Davis talks about patients who say, oh, but bread is my crack. Because there's some people who recognize that, oh, I can't give up wheat. The good thing is wheat may be addictive, but if you go through withdrawals from wheat, let's say you stop eating wheat, the withdrawal syndrome is very mild. You may feel a little irritable for 2 or 3 days, but it's not like going through withdrawal from heroin, in which case you have to be hospitalized and put on medication, and you get the sweats and the shakes, and it's dangerous. In fact, there's a drug, and that drug is called naltrexone. If they put people in an all-you-can-eat buffet, let's say I took all the people on this side of the room, and I gave you naltrexone and put you in an all-you-can-eat buffet of wheat products. And I took this side of the room and I just gave you a placebo, which is a pill that doesn't have anything in it. And I put you guys in an all-you-can-eat buffet. The people who took naltrexone, which is the morphine-blocking drug, it blocks the effect of morphine on your brain, they would eat significantly fewer calories than the people on this side of the room. So if you block the morphine receptors in your brain with a drug, then you can actually eat less. Because these people who are eating and these people who are eating and they have the morphine receptors blocked, the only reason they're eating is because they're hungry. If your morphine receptors aren't blocked by naltrexone, you're eating because of the little high, because it gives you kind of a pleasurable feeling when you eat. And you may think that sounds good. Well, I like to eat food that makes me feel good. But it's just like a smoker with the nicotine. They like to smoke because smoking makes them feel good. The problem is 2 hours later you go through withdrawals. The same thing that makes you feel good is what makes you feel bad and makes you feel hungry 2 hours later. In fact, there are some drug companies that are trying to develop naltrexone into a new miracle diet pill. But the problem is when you give people naltrexone chronically, they get depressed. Because the naltrexone, it blocks the morphine-like exorphins from the wheat in your brain, but it also blocks your normal, natural endorphins. And the endorphins are what your body releases when you feel good about something or when you have pleasure. When you exercise, you release endorphins. So they're going to combine the naltrexone with an antidepressant, right? That way, you can eat the wheat, which is an addictive drug. You can take the naltrexone so you don't eat too much wheat, and you can take the antidepressant so you don't feel too depressed from the naltrexone. And that kind of shows that's a problem with medicine and kind of with society, is that you end up going down this path, And the path is the pills after pills after pills after pills path. Yeah, and if you have 20 problems, your doctor will put you on 20 pills. I'm an ophthalmologist, and I do cataract surgery, so my patients are in the age of 65 to 85. And I can't tell you how many patients walk through the door and they have a list of medications that's 15 medications long. 15 prescription medications they take each and every day of their life. And that's what I want to, save you from. If you can get rid of just one medication, that would thrill me. Sir William Osler, the father of modern medicine, he said one of the first duties of the physician is to educate the masses not to take medicine. That's what we're here for. And when I was I went to medical school here and did my internship here. And when I was an intern, I had a professor, Lynn Bickley, who's no longer at the medical school. But she said, if you see an elderly patient and you don't take them off at least one medication, you're doing them a great disservice. So for all those patients who came into the clinic, we'd look at the list of 15 medicines. All the patients who came to the internal medicine clinic, I would look at their list of 15 medicines and see which one we could possibly take them off. As an ophthalmologist, I do cataract surgery, and I don't mess with other people's medications. And the reason is because I'm not the one managing your diabetes. I'm not the one managing your blood pressure. That's why you need to see your doctor. So, why do we eat so much of these refined carbohydrates? We already talked about they're addictive. Number two, they taste good. And that's an interesting point. I mean, I can't deny that sugar tastes good and bread tastes good and cakes and cookies and pies all taste good. But the question is, if I told you arsenic tasted like chocolate, would you eat it? Cyanide is a poison that will kill you instantly. And cyanide smells like almonds. If I told you cyanide tasted like almonds, would you take it? The answer is no. Cyanide actually naturally occurs in the pit of the wild cherry. If I told you that cyanide tasted like wild cherries, would you take it? No. So the excuse that you run in your mind that, well, it tastes good, so I have to eat things that taste good. You don't. Because if cyanide tasted good, you wouldn't eat it. You'd recognize it's a poison. Another thing is that we've been told whole grains are healthy. Basically, they did studies on hunter-gatherers, and they said, well, look, they don't get any of these diseases. Why don't they get the diseases? Well, it's because they have more fiber in their diet. And so they said, well, Americans need to eat more fiber so we don't get these diseases like diabetes and obesity and colon cancer. But the problem is that these people they studied, these hunter-gatherers they studied, they didn't get their fiber from wheat. They didn't get their fiber from cereal grains. They got their fiber from vegetables, fruits, and nuts. So, the American dietetic science community said, well, you need to eat more fiber. What's the easiest way to eat more fiber? You take white flour and turn it into whole wheat flour. Now you got more fiber. But the people that were actually studied were people who ate fruits, vegetables, and nuts. That's where they got their fiber. They're sweet. They're comfort food. There's emotional eating. It's normal. It's normal to have a hamburger between two buns, right? So for you or for me to get to the point that I no longer have a hamburger between two buns takes a little bit of a change. They're convenient, they're cheap, and they're a subconscious habit. And we'll talk about the subconscious mind a little bit later. So if they're harmful, why do we eat so many? So the number one reason was that they're addictive. Number two, they taste good. Number three, they're cheap. Breads, cookies and cakes, things like that. They're some of the cheapest foods that you can buy. Breakfast cereals, you know, you go down the breakfast cereal aisle, it's a big box like this, and it's only $4. This is an interesting story, and if it's interesting, we should tell it at the whiteboard. Grab my pen. 1960s, there was the Federal Reserve Bank, which is like the Bank of the United States, essentially. They printed too much money. When they print too much money, there's this thing called inflation. And inflation is where all the prices of everything goes up. So the price of gas went up, the price of real estate went up, the price of food went up. And so the federal government said, look, we got to do something about this because everybody has to buy food. The richest of the rich, the poorest of the poor, everybody has to buy food. And people were really angry about the food inflation, about how expensive things got. And so what they used to do, starting in the Depression, or just after the Depression, is they used to loan farmers money if the price of what they were selling got below the cost of production. So basically, let's say the cost to grow a bushel of wheat, the cost of production, this is what it cost a farmer to grow it, was $2. But the wheat was only selling for $1 a bushel. So what the government would do is the government would make them a loan of $1 so that they could have their $2 and keep the wheat off the market until the price went back up. And when the price went up above $2 a bushel, then the farmer could sell it. So it kind of propped the price up. That's what the loan program did. But you can imagine if there's food inflation and things are too expensive, the government says, well, we can't prop the price up. We've got to get the price down. And so what they did instead of giving a loan, and this is outlined in the book called The Omnivore's Dilemma. It's not in your handout, but it's The Omnivore's Dilemma. What they did is the government said, look, instead of loaning you money, we're just going to pay you and pay you the difference, and you can dump your corn and your wheat on the market. So the government paid this $1. So now the farmer received his $2. He covered his cost of production. And all that cheap corn and all that cheap wheat went onto the market. And a giant multinational corporation can buy that corn or that wheat for $1 a bushel, even though it costs $2 a bushel to produce. Who paid the extra $1? You did. You paid the extra $1. I mean, the good thing is it makes cheap food, okay? The bad thing is the food that you're subsidizing a lot of carbohydrates and carbohydrates. So anyway, the corporation buys this corn and wheat at half price, and then they process it and package it, and they sell it to you as crunchy, heart-healthy oat clusters in a box. And they take this corn or wheat, and they put about 4 cents of raw materials into a box of crunchy, heart-healthy oat and nut clusters, and they sell it to you for $4. And they got to buy it half off to begin with. So, these foods are very inexpensive because they're subsidized. Anything that's made out of wheat, anything that's made out of corn, including corn syrup, they're very inexpensive because they're subsidized. So that's one reason we eat so much. In fact, the government has spent $35 billion subsidizing wheat production and $84 billion subsidizing corn production. That's over $100 billion subsidizing the carbs and carbs industries. That's only from 1995 to 2012. $100 billion. Now, we talked about this. Anything that's a packaged food, when you see a packaged food, I want you to think of it in terms of weight. I want you to look at it. Like if you see a box of cereal and it says on there, 10 ounces, or say it says a pound, okay? Look at the first ingredient. The first ingredient is either going to be wheat or it's going to be sugar, or it's going to be corn. Could be rice. Wheat, sugar, corn, rice. Any of those things you can buy for you can buy for $1 a pound or less, retail. So if you look at that box of cereal and it says it contains a pound, net weight, total weight is a pound, and they sell it to you for $4, you know that you yourself could buy those raw ingredients for $1, and that's where they make their profits. So I was in the drugstore the other day, and I saw these powdered donuts. And the point of this is, this package of powdered donuts contained 3 ounces of product, okay? And the main 2 ingredients, the first 2 ingredients were wheat and sugar, both of which you could buy for less than $1, per pound. So that means you could make these donuts yourself at home for 18 cents, but you pay for them $1.80 at the store. And that's what packaged foods are. And so packaged foods take advantage of you because there's a lot of money that goes to corporate profits from the packaging of food. There's also, it employs people and there are manufacturing facilities and there are all sorts of things. But the point is that the food's not packaged for your health. It's not packaged for your benefit. It may be packaged for your convenience, and it is more convenient. But packaged foods are not a good value. Things that you buy on the outside of the grocery store, like at the meat counter, the cheese counter, raw dairy, vegetables, fruits, those things that they aren't processed, they aren't packaged. So there's a lot more money that goes into your nutrition from buying those products than goes into your nutrition from buying a packaged processed product. I like this image. This is a guy, he's been following the food pyramid, And this is kind of where you end up. If you follow the food pyramid, which says you need 6 to 11 servings of breads and cereals, then you end up at that point. And with the diseases of civilization. And we're going to go through these kind of one by one. First of all, let's start with diabetes. Diabetes has increased 300% from 1980 until today. And the problem with diabetes is this. Just like I was talking to a guy here, and he said, oh, yeah, the doctor told me I had prediabetes, but he didn't tell me what to do so that I didn't have to take the pills. And so when you're at that prediabetes state, you can change your diet real easy and just avoid the pills altogether. If you've gone down the diabetes path to where you're taking insulin, then your pancreas eventually burns out. And when your pancreas burns out, then you have to take some sort of medication. You have to take insulin. So what happens is if you have diabetes, we start off with a diet, and the doctor recommends you go on a diet. The problem with the diet is this. It's the American Diabetes Association diet, which is essentially high-carb, low-fat diet. Diabetes is a disease of carbohydrate metabolism. It means your body, when you have diabetes, you can't handle carbohydrates. So why on earth would the first treatment be to put you on a high-carb, low-fat diet? The answer is that they want to prevent heart disease. Diabetics get heart disease, and they think, if you eat fat, you'll get heart disease. And that has never been proven. The fact that fat causes heart disease. So, but from a medical perspective, it's okay if you got diabetes because we have metformin and lactose and glitazones and insulin and long-acting insulin, and then eventually you have surgery and retina surgery, cataract surgery, etc. There are treatments for you, or you could just cut the killer carbs. This is an analogy I thought of. Think of a drowning man. As long as the drowning man is being filled with water, he keeps drowning. Remove the water, and he's no longer drowning. You've cured him. And it's the same with diabetes. If you think of a person with diabetes, as long as that man is being filled with carbohydrates, which his body can't process, that man will continue to have diabetes. You simply remove the carbs, and the man no longer is diabetic. He's cured. You can debate whether you call it a cure or not. You say, well, it's not a cure. If I still eat carbohydrates, I still have diabetes. It's just about having a choice. You can take the pills, or you can change your diet. And these are some of the diabetic superfoods as recommended by the American Diabetes Association on their website. I just checked it. They include whole grains, beans, sweet potatoes, fat-free milk, and yogurt, which are carbs, 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 and carbs. They list other things, other low-carb stuff on there too. But the point is, if I was diabetic and I ate a meal of whole grains, beans, sweet potatoes, fat-free milk, and yogurt because they're listed on the website as superfoods, my sugar would be through the roof. And even if I wasn't diabetic, my sugar would be through the roof. So whether or not these foods are super, it depends on your perspective, right? Let's say you're a multinational drug company, and you make billions and billions of dollars every year by selling diabetes medications. Then these foods are super, right? That's the best thing you could ever want a diabetic to eat. But if you're a patient and you don't want to take 1 or 2 or 3 diabetes medications the rest of your life, they're not super. These foods to you are like water to a drowning man. In fact, on that same American Diabetes Association website, they recommend you count carbs. And they say a good place to start is to start eating 180 grams of carbs per day. One of the reasons I got interested in this is my wife had gestational diabetes with her last 2 children. And it was just amazing. If she ate a healthy bran muffin from the grocery store, man, her sugar went through the roof. If she ate meat and nuts and vegetables and as much as she wanted all day long, her sugar was just even kill. And so the question is, what's more reasonable? 180 grams of carbs a day, or this is William Osler, the father of modern medicine. He recommended 9 grams of carbs a day in 1901. Of course, in 1901, they didn't have medications to treat diabetes, and they didn't have insulin. But if you're diabetic and you want to not take all the pills, you want to avoid the complications of diabetes, 9 grams of carbohydrates a day is a much more reasonable thing than 180 grams of carbohydrates a day. The next disease of refined carb consumption is high blood pressure. And basically, the insulin itself is what causes the high blood pressure. You eat the carbohydrates increase the insulin increases your blood pressure. Step by step by step. The insulin causes the kidneys to hold on to salt. The more salt you hold on to, the higher your blood pressure is. They also cause the kidneys, insulin causes the kidneys to lose magnesium, and as you lose magnesium is supposed to relax the blood vessels and relieve your blood pressure. So as you lose magnesium, boom, the blood pressure clamps down, the blood vessels clamp down. And insulin directly stimulates the sympathetic nervous system. It causes the fight or flight response. But wait a minute, my doctor told me I had to cut the salt, right? I don't know if any of you heard that. If you cut the salt in your diet by half, you can expect your top number blood pressure, called systolic, you can expect it to go down by 4 points. Cut the salt in your diet by half, the top number of your blood pressure will go down an average of 4 points. If you cut the refined carbohydrates out of your diet, your top number of your blood pressure can go down 20 points. So which one causes high blood pressure? Is it salt or refined carbohydrates? It's the refined carbohydrates. This actually, the idea that salt caused high blood pressure came because they studied a population that immigrated from an island where they ate a traditional diet to basically a Western civilization. And they asked the people who immigrated, they said, do you eat more salt than you used to? And the answer was yes. They studied their diet, and their diet was yes, they ate more salt. But that was the only question that they asked. And, it's like when I was in medical school, they showed us a study. You can create a study such that the study can prove anything. They showed us a study that showed that polio was highly associated with ice cream consumption. So the thought was maybe ice cream causes polio. If that's the truth is, polio is not caused by ice cream consumption. Polio is an infection. But polio is spread during the summer when kids eat more ice cream. If that's the only question that you ask is, did you eat ice cream? And they say yes, then you can kind of construct a study that shows anything. But if you've got high blood pressure, your doctor has pills, There's hydrochlorothiazide, Divan, atenolol, lisinopril, and there are over 200 blood pressure medications. Or you can cut the killer carbs. This is my blood pressure again. I'll just show you again. 142 systolic in 2011, 126, 2013. Another disease that comes from refined carbohydrate consumption, and especially wheat consumption, is osteoporosis. You wonder why all these people have osteoporosis. There's two reasons. Number one, there's an epidemic of vitamin D deficiency in this country. That's because we're eating too many refined carbs and we're not eating meat. Vitamin D comes from meat. It comes from being in the sun, but it comes from meat. And number two is that when you consume wheat acidifies the body. Essentially, if you're eating a diet, and your diet is meat and vegetables, meat is kind of acidic. Vegetables are basic. Acid, base. Okay? Acid, base. Well, your body chemistry operates better when it's just a touch basic. And so if your diet is half meat, half vegetables, overall, your diet is basic, and your body likes that. When you add wheat to the diet, your diet becomes net acid. The end result is you add wheat to a meat and vegetable diet, everything becomes acid. Your body doesn't function well at an acidic pH. So what does it do? Your diet goes to, see if I can draw one, goes to your bones, and it dissolves the calcium and dissolves the phosphates out of your bones to help buffer the acid, to bring your pH back to normal. So, all these people who have osteoporosis, it can be improved by low-carb diet, getting rid of the wheat. Or you can take your calcium and your vitamin D, and then the once-a-month pill, Boniva, Fosamax. And then if you get a fracture, you end up with hip replacement or spinal fracture repair, or you just cut the killer carbs. Arthritis in the knees is caused by carrying too much weight. If you lose the weight, arthritis in the knees improves. Also, when there's fat tissue you carry around your belly, and this fat tissue around your belly is uniquely inflammatory. It's like a big organ or a big gland that releases inflammatory cytokines. They're called cytokines, little inflammatory mediators into your blood system. And that fat tissue around your belly, when it releases those things, those inflammatory mediators, they get into your joints and make your arthritis worse. But from a medical perspective, your doctor has pills like Vioxx, which they took off the market because it gave people too many heart attacks. Well, we used to have Vioxx, I guess. But there's Vioxx and Celebrex and ibuprofen, indomethacin and Aleve, and eventually knee replacement for arthritis. You can even have hip replacement for arthritis, or you can cut the killer carbs. Heart disease, we've talked about this before. Small, dense LDL is bad, and killer carbs cause that. Low HDL is bad. The killer carbs cause that. And your high triglycerides, the killer carbs cause that. And if you have bad cholesterol, then there are a whole list of pills that you could take. Simvastatin, lovastatin, Lipitor, Zocor, Crestor, aspirin, high-dose niacin. And then if things get really bad, they do a angiogram and they'll do a stent for you. And if they get really, really bad, they crack your chest open and they bypass all your arteries. So, or you can cut the killer carbs. And I want to tell you what I'm saying and what I'm not saying. I'm not saying that if you cut these killer carbs out of your diet, everything's going to be perfect. That you're never going to have a medical problem. You're never going to have a heart attack. But I'm telling you that if you cut the killer carbs out, you're going to take less pills. You're going to take less medicine. You're going to feel better. And you're going to lose weight. It won't make you perfect, but it should improve your health. And then there are a bunch of inflammatory diseases, either of the bowel or inflammatory diseases in other parts of the body that are improved when you cut the carb and you cut wheat consumption. Wheat is uniquely inflammatory. It has gliadin proteins, which are found in gluten. And the gliadin proteins, hello? Just joking. The gliadin proteins that are found in gluten, they're irritating to the stomach, they're irritating to the bowels, and they're also inflammatory in the rest of your body. If you want to learn more about wheat, you read the book Wheat Belly. It's listed in the handout. There are all sorts of drugs. In fact, in the book Wheat Belly, there's a patient, she had ulcerative colitis. She was scheduled in 2 weeks to have her colon removed and have a bag placed where the stool drains out of a bag instead of normal. And the doctor said, look, why don't you just cut wheat out? At least try it for 6 weeks because, just see if you get better. And if you don't, then you can still have your ostomy bag. And if you do get better, then you get to keep your colon. And so she got off, she was on 3 medications at the time, about to have an ostomy, and she got off 2 of her medications and got down to 1. And then she eventually dumped her last medication just by getting rid of the wheat. And she did not have to have an ostomy. She still has her colon. This is something that I would not have believed if I had not seen this with my own eyes. My son, who is now 4 years old, he used to sneeze and sneeze and sneeze. And you know when kids sneeze and that snot goes all the way from their nose down to their waist? You guys have seen that? All the way from the nose to the waist. And it was like that for months. My wife made him an appointment to go see the allergist because she said something has to be done. This isn't normal. And then before the allergist appointment came up, we read the book Wheat Belly. And Wheat Belly says, there's a lot of people that have allergies to wheat. They don't know it. So we stopped eating any wheat whatsoever at our house. And the snot from the nose to the waist stopped completely. And if my son goes to a birthday party and he eats cake or some chicken nuggets that have a breading on them, he sneezes the snot from his nose to his waist for 2 days, and then it goes away. So at my house, we eat 0 wheat. The other thing is my wife, she has kind of chronic nasal sinus allergies, and they bother her at night especially. And when she stopped eating the wheat, they went away. They just went away. She was, from high school into college, she was on allergy shots. And when we moved to Lubbock, it got better. And when she stopped the wheat, it just went away. And this was something that I would not believe if I hadn't seen it for myself. Because I was taught in medical school, sinus allergies are due to local irritation from things that you inhale. So there's pollen in the air, dust in the air, mites in the air. You inhale them, they get into your sinuses, they cause you to sneeze, and they make allergic reaction and mucus. But I now believe that people could be allergic to a lot of foods, especially wheat is number 1, dairy affects some people number 2. They can be allergic to a lot of foods that cause chronic sinusitis, and it has nothing to do with the stuff that you inhale, nothing to do with your environment. Acid reflux. This is my wife again. So my wife is 7 months pregnant. And 7 months pregnant, a lot of women have indigestion because the baby's taking up all the space that their stomach is supposed to go. And when she was 7 months pregnant, she lived on Tums and Mylanta. I think it was Mylanta. But anyway, Tums and Mylanta. And then during this experiment, she said, oh, well, we're going to cut the wheat out. So we cut the wheat out. She's 7 months pregnant. Indigestion goes away. And so then a month later, she's 8 months pregnant. You know, she's really big, and she still doesn't have any indigestion. Several weeks after the baby was born, she had a cookie. Horrible indigestion. So cutting the wheat out of your diet is something that you should at least try, because you might not know what kind of effect it's going to have on you. You might say, cut the wheat out of your diet, and like, oh yeah, my chronic allergy's gone away. My chronic rash has gone away. My chronic indigestion's gone away. Now, if you have indigestion, there's all sorts of pills that you can take. Or you can cut the carbs and cut the wheat. In fact, I thought the tomato sauce of the pasta and pizza gave me indigestion. I was wrong. It was actually the wheat in the noodles and in the pizza crust. Obesity and overweight. The carbohydrates signal the body to store fat. There are all sorts of pills. And there are people who will make you a patient for life. You know, they want you to go to meetings. Meetings and support groups. Why do you need support? You shouldn't be depressed. People get depressed when they're on a calorie-restricted diet. You should feel great because you're on a low-carb diet. Being overweight and the associated diseases are caused by a hormonal imbalance. People don't just eat too much. The hormones are causing you to eat too much. The insulin's causing you to eat too much. The addictive exorphins in the wheat are causing you to eat too much. This lady, she's a Pima Indian living on a reservation, some of the poorest people in the Southwest. And she's obese. Dirt poor and obese. Why? That used to be kind of a paradox to me. How could you be dirt poor and obese? You know? You're absolutely dirt poor. They have nothing and obese. It's because she survives on rations that they sent to the reservation. And the main rations are flour, sugar, and crackers. Wheat, and sugar. Doctors often think that patients can't lose weight, and that's because the diets that we're taught to give people to lose weight actually cause people to gain weight, because we're taught to give people high carbohydrate, low fat diet. We're taught that if you could just lose weight, your diseases would improve and you wouldn't have to take so many pills. But you can't. Well, why can't the patients lose weight? They can't because the diets that we give you to lose weight cause you to get fat and they make you miserable. So what happens if you cut the killer carbs? You'll improve all these diseases. You may be able to take less medicines and stop your medicines, require less surgery, have more energy, and feel better. And that's one reason that you have to see your doctor before you do this, because you'll have to get your medicines adjusted. 2 reasons. Number 1, you'll have to have your medicines adjusted. Number 2, you may have some sort of disease to where eating a low-carb, high-protein diet is not good for you. I met a lady, she had polycythemia. Polycythemia, she can't eat too much iron, so she doesn't eat much meat. So should she do a low-carb diet? Probably not. People with kidney disease should not do a low-carb diet because their kidneys can't handle the protein. So you have to see your doctor. There's some people that I know that had improvement in their symptoms. We already talked about. Well, we didn't talk about this lady who, this is a person I personally know. She can fit back into her jeans that she wore before she had 3 kids. You know, having kids, you tend to get a little bit bigger. Chronic digestive problems, that's another friend of mine. They've gone away since she stopped the wheat. Allergies and sneezing, gone away. This is another person I know, the chronic eye inflammation. He has this weird inflammatory eye condition. called uveitis, where his eye gets inflamed and his pressure goes high periodically throughout the year. He stops the wheat, it's improved. He used to get flare-ups like 3 or 4 times a year. Maybe now he gets a flare-up once a year or 2. Oh, and there's another guy I know. Yeah, you can be on 2 different sides of this spectrum, you know. You can be on the, look, I just want to lose some weight. I just want to feel better. I want to get rid of some pills. Or you can be like, oh, I want to get ripped. And so this is a guy who wants to get ripped. You know, he's been at the gym. He's been exercising. He's super healthy. And he cut the carbs so he can see his six-pack. So that's what some people are into. So this was a graphic I found on the internet. It's called, I think, Happy Pills. This lady's taking happy pills. But the idea is, you know, you don't have to take all the pills your whole life. You can choose to suffer with if you have diseases, you can choose to suffer with those diseases and their symptoms. You can take the pills and the medical treatments, or you can cut the killer carbs and change your diet. All right, let's do a few questions. Does anybody have any questions you want to ask? Yes, ma'am.
I'm so confused about the wheat because I always thought it was a white or any of the wheat that says that it's bleached white flour was that wheat.
Yes,
So I always thought the all-grain wheat bread, all of that was okay. And you're saying that's not the case?
that's not the case. 2 slices of whole wheat bread will raise your blood sugar as high as 2 slices of white bread. Okay? Number 1. Number 2, I can't think of what number 2 was. Sorry. But yes, it's just as bad. Oh, yeah, this is what I was going to tell you. Whole wheat bread is like the low-tar version of cigarettes. When you buy cigarettes, you could either buy regular cigarettes or low-tar cigarettes. And low-tar cigarettes are supposed to be a little better for you. But does that mean they're okay? Does that mean you should smoke? Does that mean you should have a whole bunch of low-tar cigarettes? No. So there's white bread and there's whole wheat bread. And the whole wheat bread is like the low-tar version. So that still means you shouldn't have flour. You shouldn't have wheat. Even if it's low-tar wheat, you still shouldn't have wheat.
So what kind of bread do you eat?
Bread made out of, we'll go over that, but there's bread made out of almond flour. Basically bread we make at home.
What about barley flour?
I don't know the answer about barley flour. You'd have to look up the net carbs in it. I know this. I know that wheat flour has about 92 net carbs per cup. And almond flour has 9. So 92 versus 9. Yes, sir, in the back.
On the wheat, does it depend on the species of the wheat, like for instance, modern wheat versus ancient wheat, or just wheat, all wheat in general?
Ancient wheat should be better for you than modern wheat. In the book Wheat Belly, the doctor, William Davis, what he did is modern wheat is very different from ancient wheat. So what he did is he ate two pieces he made the bread himself from the wheat grains. And he used ancient wheat and ate 2 pieces of toast and checked his sugar, and his sugar was fine and he felt normal. It didn't spike his blood sugar up like we've been watching. And then he used modern wheat kernels, and he made some bread, and number 1, it gave him digestive problems, and number 2, it made his blood sugar spike. So ancient wheat is better than modern wheat. Well, yeah, we'll do one more question and then we'll take a break. Yes?
So you're suggesting that we go to the doctor prior to,
Yes, ma'am.
and then how often should we go? How often do you suggest you go for follow-up to start dropping meds? You know, do you understand?
Yeah, and you know, that would be a question for your doctor. Because if you're taking 3, one of the most powerful things is on that video of Eric Westman, he said, look, Eric Westman is a doctor at Duke, and he said, if you have diabetes and you're starting a low-carb diet, on the first day, you need to cut your diabetes pills in half. So from the very first day, cut your diabetes pills in half. If you don't, you're going to get hypoglycemic. And being hypoglycemic, having low blood sugar, is dangerous. Dangerous, like it'll send you to the hospital. So that's why you have to see your doctor first. And your doctor may say, look, he may say, just if you're going to do this, you need to check your blood sugar 5 times a day until you get to kind of a stable level and call me and we'll adjust your pills. So I don't know how often to check in. I would ask him that.
So it'd be the same thing like with your blood pressure medications. Just check them more often until you see a change.
Yes, ma'am. Let's take a break. Let's take 10 minutes. Thank you, everybody.